We will stand united.
Hello and welcome to Rise With Us, where we're talking to top athletes and fitness experts to find out what makes them tick and keeps them motivated. We'll be digging for insights into some of their biggest achievements, but also their little everyday wins, bringing you top tips from the ordinary lives of some rather extraordinary and successful people, all to help us rise up in our day-to-day challenges. And on Rise With Us today is one of the UK's most influential athletes. She took up boxing in 2005 and within 5 years had already won 5 national amateur championships, becoming the first female to compete for GB boxing and winning 2 medals at the European and World Amateur Championships. In 2012, she became a national icon, making history as Great Britain's first female Olympic boxer at the London Games. 2 years later, she won a silver medal at the Women's European Championships before announcing in 2015 that she would step away from the sport to start a family. Just 2 years later, though, she announced her return to boxing, this time as a pro. And after winning her first 6 fights, she was crowned with her first professional belt, the WBA Super Featherweight title, in front of her home fans in Liverpool. She's also worked as a television pundit, a youth sports trust mentor, and she's consistently defied the odds, proving she still has plenty to fight for. She is, of course, Natasha Jonas. Natasha, welcome to Rise With Us. Quite the list of achievements in the ring. First of all, what motivates you?
I think your motivation changes as you go along in your sport, as you grow as a person. You know, when I was first starting out, I just wanted to be a somebody, and I was going to find that however way I was going to do it. Football didn't work, so I took up boxing as a good mistake. And you know, when I thought that boxing, being able to box for the club, was the highest it was going to go, then they was like, well, you could be the champion of England. Do you want to go in that? Do you want to go into that tournament? I was like, yeah, I want to be in the AVAs. And then I won it, and then I thought, right, that's it, that's as good as it's going to get. And then they was like, well, actually now you can start, you know, going to international tournaments for England because you're the champion. I was like, okay, I'll do that. And then eventually they said 2010, you know, we're going to make a women's national GB team, and it's going to be an Olympic sport. And if you want to go in the Olympics, you have to go to these assessments. So my motivation kept on changing at every single stage, but there was always something holding me there. And then, you know, all that happens, and then you're so focused on results when you're on GB, because, you know, I was competing against 3-4 other people in my weight division, trying to be the one person selected to go to the one qualifier. So a bad result would knock you to the bottom of the pile. So then you was always trying to, you know, your motivation was always trying to, you know, be the best and be the top of your group to get to the qualifier. Eventually, they said I can go, and, you know, my motivation was to be an Olympian. So, you know, it just never ever stops. When I stepped away from amateur sport, I thought I was stepping away from boxing forever. There wasn't a big female professional scene here. And then, you know, Katie goes, and, you know, everyone's, oh, okay, we like Katie. Then, you know, Terry goes, and everyone goes, and everyone's like, oh, we're interested in women's boxing. Someone said, why wouldn't you go back? And I was thinking, well, what is actually stopping me? And I thought, you know, there was a little bit of unfinished business in the amateurs, and as great as all them things that you read out are, there was some things that, like, maybe it was that I didn't win an Olympic medal, maybe it was that I didn't win a Commonwealth medal, but there was something that I wasn't fully satisfied with, and then that became my motivation for being a professional. And then it's not as, when I say it's not as results driven, it is, because obviously more than ever, you know, professional, you lose and you kind of go to the bottom of the pile again. But my daughter put it into perspective of what actually it is. It's not, you know, sport isn't everything. She is. So, you know, my motivations now are, you know, I want her to see me doing well and, you know, doing good things, and, you know, standing out, and me and my sister Nikita, obviously, we're in male-dominated sport, and I want my daughter to see that. Like, it doesn't matter if nobody's ever done it, or people say it's not for you. You can still be successful, and they're the kind of my motivations now, and for other young girls to see. And I want to do that. I want to be like that.
Is that a part of it as well? Now your daughter is old enough to sort of understand what it is you do, being that strong role model for her and other young girls, and showing them they can do anything.
Yeah, it's mad, because I don't think as an athlete you ever see yourself as a role model, or you don't ever kind of put yourself on that like pedestal kind of thing, but you obviously are, and people do look up to you. But my daughter is a big part of that. And especially in the lockdown and fighting for the first world title against Terry Harper, she was there was no school, so and we didn't want to bubble with anyone, because I couldn't really bubble with anyone. I didn't want to catch anything, and obviously you have to get tested and all stuff in the thing. So I was trying to minimalise the people I was around, plus not put anybody else in danger. So she was coming to the gym with me, and for that first time, if you say to her before that, what's mum do? Mum boxes. Where does mum work? In the gym. That's all she really got the idea of. But when she was here, she was seeing me spar, she was seeing me punch the bag, she would give me water between rounds, she would be, clapping for me, good shot, mummy, and all this. And then we would go to the track, and I was chasing her down the track, and Joe would say, Mila, go, mummy, go, and I'd run after her. So for the first time she was involved, and she's seen what happened in the gym, and that moment, and them moments were really special, because she understood what went on when mummy goes to the gym, and what that hard work that mummy has to put in for what she sees on the telly.
Yeah, absolutely. That must have been, the upside of what was a really tricky time for everyone. When you talk about, the steps you took in your career, and it was this opportunity comes along, and now you can do the next thing. Obviously, alongside that, you've got to be working very hard to step up each of those levels. What is that driving force within you when it comes to sport? Because you've always been sporty, haven't you?
Yeah, in our family, like, everything's a competition, and if you beat adults in our family, then you've genuinely beat them from a young age. Everyone is quite sporty in our family, so my mum's probably the most competitive. So it's none of that let the kids win. You have to beat me mum, and I think that's probably where it stems from, and then it just progresses. But like I say, growing up, the area that we were from, whatever it was, people always had visions of who I could be and put barriers up of what I could do and who I could become. My mum was a young mum, and she had me when she was 15, and people told her that it was probably best that she had an abortion, and I'd only grow up and I'd only be this and I'd only be like her and I'd only do this, and all my life I've kind of known that and thought, well, I'm going to be different, and I'm going to break them barriers, and I'm going to prove you wrong. And sometimes some of my biggest achievements come out of when people say I can't do stuff, because I'm like, okay, well, we'll see. Because people have been doing that all my life, and it's that motivation kind of thing that, like, I'm going to prove you wrong, and don't let anyone put borders or barriers up to tell you who you can be. You can be who you want and achieve what you want. You just have to work hard to do it. And I'm not scared of working hard. I'm not even scared of failing. I'm scared of missing the opportunity and not taking the opportunities when they come.
That's a really good lesson, isn't it? Like, you shouldn't be scared of failure. It's missing out on those chances. In boxing, you train intensely, of course. You must have days where you wake up and you hurt or you're just tired. How do you motivate yourself to get up and move on those days where you think, I just need to rest and just lie under this duvet?
I remember, obviously, coming back with Joe, I was a lot heavier. I'd been out of the ring for 2 years. And I was like, right, I think I can get myself down to this weight. And Joe was like, no.
That's not what you want to hear.
No, you're going to be this weight. And I was like, that's optimistic. But we'll see how the training goes. And obviously, you flow back into a routine. But I knew it was going to be hard. But yeah, you just get back into it. But I remember going from, like, domestic amateur England level, and then going to full-time on GB. And I remember speaking to Carl Yaffai, who was like, he'd been there like a cycle before, and I was like, it might have been like a month or two in, and I remember just sitting in the sauna and saying, Carl, when does it stop hurting? Like, when does it stop hurting? And he was like, oh, don't worry, eventually your body will just get used to it, and it does. Like, literally, your body can do anything as long as your mind's with it, and one of the biggest things that I did in the lockdown was go away and work on what makes me tick mentally more than physically, because I know I can do it. Like when I'm saying, oh, you know, when people tell me I can't do it, that gives me the motivation. That's because my mind says, I'm going to prove you wrong, and that's my driving force to prove everybody wrong. But I went away in the lockdown and thought, right, I'm going to work on myself and to know what makes me tick, what makes, you know, what is demotivating, what is motivating, what, you know, am I emotive? Because in boxing, you've got to be, everyone thinks, oh, yeah, you just go in and punch everyone. It's not like that. You've got to be smart and you've got to react. You've got to be in control when you're out of control, because the first thing you want to do is someone punch you full force in the face, is hit them back. Yeah, and you can't, it's not just that simple. So you've got to be smart about it. So you've got to be in control, out of control, and I went and worked away on that. How do I keep my mind in control? And as I say, what makes you tick?
And that's something that everyone can do, really. It doesn't matter what your job is or what your, like, you know, your hobby, your passion is. You've got to know what makes you tick, haven't you? So you know how to motivate yourself. What sort of things did you do to discover that about yourself? Because I think that's something we all should maybe be taking the time to do.
Yeah, I think, you know, exercising was a big one. I do that anyway, but like, even, you know, with my little daughter in the house, we had so much fun doing some of the, you know, the stuff online, and we done our own little mini Olympics and stuff as part of, that was part of the core curriculum that we were teaching. That was the PE section. But yeah, reading books, watching series. Me and Joe used to be messaging each other about, oh, there's this one, there's this book, Relentless, you know, there's this series.
It's like you said, there's information out there, isn't it? And when you start engaging with stuff like that, you open up your mind to different ways to make yourself tick and what works for you. I want to talk to you, you touched on it earlier, about your footballing career, because you were a very good footballer before you got into boxing.
Nikita would say otherwise.
I'm sure she would, but she's playing for England, and, you know, Leon, she can keep her thoughts for herself. You were a very good women's footballer, got a scholarship to go and play college football in America, which is a huge deal. You picked up an injury when you were out there that put a stop to that. When you were on that trajectory, you know, you're playing in America, which at the time is the place to be, and that, through no fault of your own, just one of those things that happens, was stopped. How did you handle that and find the ability to sort of rise back up again and find something else to do? Because that's, you know, you're young as well. That's a lot to sort of deal with.
Yeah, to be honest, totally honest, I didn't handle it very well. I came back because I couldn't stay there and cheer my mates on and the team on. And every week I was well enough because I couldn't play. And I didn't... Again, I wasn't really great academically, and I didn't really go there for the academic side. Like I said, I'm going to be a somebody. I'm going to be Mia Hamm. That's who I wanted to be. And when I came home, I was one of the first people to go to university, and everyone had threw like a big party for me when I left. And like, you know, my nan's telling everyone I'm going to be this big footballer, and I'm telling her how big I'm going to be. And when I came home, I felt like I let them all down. So for a year, I had a knee brace thing on, and I couldn't do any exercise. Well, I made the excuse that I couldn't. I probably could have, but I didn't do any exercise. And in that year, I realised that sport was really my motivation to do anything. I'd always, and again, Wayne Rooney's had just signed for Everton, and he was 16 at the time. You know, I think Beth Tweddle had just won her first Commonwealth gold, and these are all like Liverpool-based athletes, and I was looking at them thinking, he's 16, she's 16, you know, Catherine Johnson-Thompson was winning all the school, breaking all the school game records. She was a baby at the time. I was like, I'm like 20. If I was going to be a somebody, I'd already be it by now. So I'm just going to go and be like everyone else and get a job and do what I have to. But that wasn't what I wanted. It was just what I needed to do at that time, so I wasn't motivated to do it. I had 7 jobs in 1 year, and I just kept on getting sacked from them all. You know, it'd come to the weekend, I'd go out with my mates and just wouldn't turn up on the Monday because I didn't want to be there. Eventually, I'd probably hit rock bottom. Looking back now, I probably think I was a little bit depressed, but I didn't recognise that at the time. And I thought, right, something in my life has got to change. I can't just keep, like, every 2 weeks looking for a new job because I can't be bothered, or, you know, just going through this rut of going out on a Friday, you know, till Sunday, and then, like, whether or not to go to work on the Monday. I just can't keep doing it. And eventually, as I said to my uncle, I'd put on a lot of weight. I'd lost a lot of confidence. People don't realise how like a social thing sport is. When you play football, you know, you're in a team of, like, it's about 20 people in our team, and then, you know, you go to their family engagement, that one's got a party. It's quite social, and you interact on the outside, not just in a football pitch. So I'd lost a whole group of mates. So I was like to my uncle, can I just have your keys to just go and train and do something? And doing that something, getting back in the gym and just hitting something and running on the treadmill, doing some weight, I felt you start to feel better, and it got me out of the rut. And I always thought it was like, oh, getting up at this time, and, you know, you run at this time, you check your weight at this time. I always thought it was that I hated, but really and truly it was that I needed most. It was the structure that I needed most, and because I did just do as I please, I didn't do anything. But so when I was doing that, I got into a routine, got into a structure, and then obviously my first ever coach from the Rotunda spotted me and was like, oh, stop training by yourself and come to our local gym, which was the Rotunda. I didn't know that at the time. She was like, boxing, it's a all-female class. You're just a nice group of girls. I think you'll enjoy it. It's better than training by yourself. And it just kept on fobbering off. Because I didn't know if I was ready for that upset again. You know, I didn't want to compete at that time. But I thought I was sort of done with the sports thing, and I had to be a bit more mature about it. And then when I went, that was 17 years ago. I'm still here now, so I loved it. And then, like, yeah, she was like, after a while of being there, she was like, you know, you can compete if you want. And I was like, oh, new challenge, new thing. Yeah, I'll do that. Go ahead, put my name down. And then, oh yeah, you can, you know, go with the ABAs if you want. I was like, yeah, okay, put my name down, I'll do that. So, you know, it's them. It's like I say, just taking your opportunities when they come.
Not many people go on to compete at the Olympics, become professional athletes. That thing being out of your control that stops you doing what you think is your path, and being in a rut, like we kind of all have been at times over the last year, when there's no structure, no routine. What is your advice to someone who's feeling a bit like that at the moment, like they don't have that routine and they just need to do something to get themselves sort of back out there and back living? What's your advice to people who feel a bit rudderless, I suppose?
Yeah, I think you've got to find what you like, you know, and try something different. I never ever wanted to be a boxer. I had no intentions of. And when she said it to me, come to the boxing class, I was like, who wants to do boxing? Who wants to get punched in the face? But, you know, if someone gives you an opportunity, what's the worst that can happen? You don't like it, okay, you don't have to go back. You know what I mean? So, you know, try new things. And I'm one of them people that really, I genuinely think that there's a sport out there for everybody, whether that's pool, whether that's, you know, curling, whether that's, you know, track, whether that's boxing, whatever it is, there's something out there that you will enjoy, and you might have to do 105 different ones to find the one that works for you, but you'll find it. So yeah, open yourself to new ideas and just be open.
Yeah. You might have some fun as well if you try every sport in the world.
Oh,
find your one. That's got the making of like a TV series. I might steal that idea.
I must have tried a million sports, and yeah, I just happened to be good at one.
Let's talk about goals then, because when you sort of talk about your career, it's very much you're seizing every opportunity and then seeing how far you can run with it. Do you set specific goals when you're, you know, stepping up to a new challenge, or do you just see what happens and work really hard?
A little bit of both. I didn't realise that I do, in the sense of, my mum told me a story I was 4 watching the 88 games in Seoul, and because I was sporty from a young age, I was just amazed by all the sport on the telly. I was saying, Mum, I'm going to be there, I'm going to be there. And my mum just looked at me, whatever. But she's like, you know, okay, you're going to have to practice. And that was when I was 4, and it took me, you know, 24 years, but I got there. And that's a long commitment to get it anywhere. So, you know, anyone think that it's going to be fast? Obviously, people have done it at a younger age than you know, taking 24 years. But, you know, you can have short-term goals, which was just to compete for the club, you know, compete for England, Britain, whoever. But then there's longer-term ones, and, you know, everyone's is different. But, yeah. I got there in the end.
What did it feel like when that, I mean, if you're saying it at 4, it's less of a goal and more of like a dream, right? That's the dream. What did it feel like when that dream came true and you know, the first British female to compete in the Olympics in boxing?
All through the, like, build up, and because there was so much pressure. There was only one tournament that we had to qualify, and it was the World Championships. We had to come within the top 4 to even qualify. A lot of them were Europeans, so there was all, like, I knew I was, at first they said you have to get to the quarters, which is the top 8, and I knew I was top 8 in the world, and it was like, okay, we've changed up things. You go in regions, now you have to become top 3 in your region. And I was like, I don't know if I'm top 3 in Europe. Yeah. So, you know, that pressure came, but yeah, you just rise to the occasion. You find something in you, and when I'd qualified, everyone was emotional. I was the first person in the GB team to do it. So, like, the coaches were crying, everyone was crying, like, my dad was there. And I'd held it together, and I was fine. And then when I got to see my mum, when we came back, my mum was in floods of tears, and I just burst out crying as well. And it was because of that story, when she was saying, you know, you've worked hard, you've done 1,000 sports, and it took you 24 years and lots of ups and lots of downs, but you've got there. And I think that moment was special because she knew, and she, you know, parents play a huge role in you know, how you guiding your way as a child through sport. You know, they're at every single practice you're at, they're dropping you off, picking you up, paying for it. And I'm going through the same stages myself at the minute, but it's something that I'm happy to do because I know where it can lead. You know, I've given myself a better life and it's all through sport. So.
Your family are obviously a huge part of your support network. Like you say, now you're getting to that similar stage with your daughter. Do you have more of an appreciation of, you know, what your mum did for you when you were younger and the support she's always given you? Yeah, I think there's loads of things when you're young, you just kind of think, well, that's what you're supposed to do. And the same way my daughter does, well, Mum, that's what you're always supposed to do. But, like, you're just a taxi. Yeah, you are just the money machine. Yeah. But yeah, as obviously I was a bit older getting into boxing. I was 21 when I started, and obviously, you know, you kind of appreciate your parents a little bit more over that then anyway. So, but yeah, now that I'm in it myself, it can be tough, you know, juggling things and dropping what you like to do, you know, pave a way for your child and to make sure they're happy, and, like, you're not the most important thing anymore. There's another little person that's more important than you, and you have to put before yourself. So I think that's one of the biggest things I now appreciate about my mum, that, you know, she didn't only just have me either, she had me brothers and sisters. In terms of goal setting then, I suppose boxing sort of lends itself quite easy to setting out goals, because once you know you've got a fight, you're in the build-up, you're in the camp for that. How do you go about setting your short-term goals when you've got a fight on the horizon, and the longer-term goals in the period you're in now, for example, when you're between fights? How do you manage that? So the longer-term goals of the fight date is easy. Like, to be fair, now as a professional, Joe sets that programme, and my short-term goal is, like, every day is to come in and be in the moment and be in the present. Don't be thinking about my next track session or, you know, what I've got to do tomorrow. Just stay here and do the best that I can do right now and listen, and, you know, so I take every session at a time. Sometimes with sparring, there'll be things that come up from the last spar, and Joe will be like, okay, this went well last spar, this didn't go so well, so then before I come to
like the training session, I'll be thinking, right, this is what I need to work on in this sport, and I'll replay it in my head, and you know, when I come to the session, it's fresh in my mind. I'll warm up on the bag doing it. I'll do whatever I need to do, and yeah, that's basically it. I say that basically.
He did the hard work, basically.
Yeah, there's a lot of it, to be fair.
In sport, and it's the same for everyone, no matter what you're doing, you've got these huge highs when you're winning fights and you're competing at the Olympics and you're going pro, and then of course there are lows and there are disappointments. Get the sense your mum is one of those people that's there for you no matter what. How important is that support network, and how vital are your family when it's bouncing the lows, I suppose, more than the highs?
When I was thinking about turning professional, my mum and my cousin was the first two people that I called, because everyone else sees the glitz and the glamour, and you know, you're always in the paper with your little gold medal or whatever that you've won, or you know, you go into this tournament and you go into the Olympics and whatever. But no one sees after I got beat by Katie Taylor, me crying for 2 days, and they do, and they see, you know, when I almost got kicked off the squad, and then when I won the test event to stay on the squad. So they see all that, and they know what goes into it. I come home to them, you know, after the week it was done in camp, and they see that. So they're the two people that I phoned first, and they are very important. When I'm going into bubbles for the week as a pro, you know, me mum and my cousins are juggling the baby and getting her to school and picking her up between them. So, and just everything, just, you know, mentally, physically, my mum trains with me sometimes as well, and emotionally, definitely, it's huge to have someone to open up. And even Nikita, you know, she's a high performing athlete herself, so having that relativity of being able to speak to someone who knows what I'm talking about is important as well.
And it's something as well, isn't it, when it's, you know, everyone needs someone that they can go to, and sometimes you just have to work a little bit harder to find that person if you're not lucky enough to be surrounded by family, but there is someone who can help and lend an ear. Yeah,
and you know what, I open myself a lot on social media to you know, going in and giving talks in school, especially in my local area, you know, and interacting with young boxers, male, female, whoever, because I do think it's important to have that, and just sometimes just a little bit of guidance or a little bit of extra knowledge, you know, where you don't lack, because not everybody has that. And sometimes I have been very lucky throughout my whole boxing career. The media was always very supportive, my club was always very supportive, my coaches were always very supportive. But, you know, when you get onto the bigger stage as like GB level, and you're speaking to experiencers from all over the country, not every girl had the same experience. And that was, for me, heartbreaking, because I was like, wow, you've overcome barriers that I didn't even know was there, because I've never had them. So, you know, I do think it's important to network and to share good experiences, bad experiences, and how you overcome them yourself, because I was learning things because I'd never experienced that.
Yeah, the bad experience as well is so important to talk about, because in the age of social media, we just tend to see just the success, right? And you actually, whatever image you're seeing of a person on top of the world, there's a lot of paddling underneath the water frantically to make it look like you're gliding, isn't there?
Of course, and I don't think there's no one that I know of, or athlete that I can think of, that hasn't failed. And everyone is so petrified of failing, and everyone's petrified in boxing to losing out. And sometimes it can become a little bit of a burden, not a burden, but it becomes more of a pressure when you've got to know to keep it, because you're like, but really and truly, you know, Joe Calzaghe, Floyd Mayweather, you know, there's only a handful of boxers that ever come out with their O intact, and we're so precious of it, and we're so protective of it, that it becomes a bit of an added pressure itself. But yeah, I would say to anyone, don't be scared to fail, because failure just makes you that little bit better. Next time you fail again, so what? Get a little bit better the next time. You know, there's nothing to be scared of about failing, because it'll improve you. And even I hadn't been beat. I'd never been beat domestically in amateur. And then my first international bout, I got beat, and I was like, wow. And I went back and like reassessed myself, because when you're winning, it's easy to think that things are going perfect because you're winning. But as soon as you lose, you go back and you fix things that was happening from day one, but you didn't really quite have to fix it because you were still winning. So that's what you're going to do. And even with the open off as a professional, I was like, okay, I had to start from rock bottom again. And that was hard because I'd never lost in that manner before. So that was more of an ego thing as well. I was like, wow, she did that to me. Like, I have to pick myself up. And it took me a long time to even decide to come back from that, because I was like, have I still got it? You know, am I getting too old? Has the baby affected me? And I was starting to question myself. Other people was, you know, sending me stuff on social media saying, oh, you know, she's past it, she's too old, she's too this, she's too that. And I was thinking, no, are they right? And I started questioning myself. But then, you know, I went away, like I said, worked on myself, and I overcome it.
You mentioned being away from your daughter, and obviously when you're boxing, there are periods of time where you just can't be with her because you're in camp and you're in fight mode. How do you deal with that mum guilt? Because it's something that no matter what you do for a living, people suffer from it.
Yeah, I think I did struggle with it when I first turned professional. I was like, oh, I'm not getting enough time with the baby, and you know, I'm spending all this time up there. And when I spoke to other mums, I was lucky that my little friendship group, like we've got kids like 4 months between each other. So when I was speaking to them, they were like, oh, I'm back in work, and you know, I don't know what to do. And I was like, wow, they're going through the same thing that I have. And I think, you know, if you're a working mum, like every mum's going through the same struggles. Like I'm just the same as everybody else. It's just that my work's a little bit different. You know, I drop the baby to nursery at 9 o'clock and I pick her up at 3 or 5 o'clock, depending on what my sessions are. And that's, you know, 9 to 5. That's what a working mum would do. So that eased me that, you know, I wasn't the only one. I wasn't, you know, was just speaking about it with friends and with family. I knew that I weren't on my own, and that's something that everybody else does go through. So that did help. And then I just made the time that we did have, you know, I'd just make it, you know, do something that we would both get something out of, and like make it a quality time. Do you know what I mean? We'd go swimming, you know, we'd go to the park, we'd go, you know, to the amusement play, the soft play areas, and we'd just, you know, eat, or just eat, whether it was just have a movie night, as she calls it, just sitting in and watching a film, and that's, you know, that was mum and me time. So. Yeah,
it's just finding those moments and reminding yourself why you're doing it all, right? It's for her. You've spoken about, you know, engaging with younger people and being a support for them. How important is it for you in terms of your career legacy to inspire the next generation and encourage more women into boxing? I think there was something like a 57% increase in interest in the sport after you fought at the London Olympics.
Yeah, I think that one of the Olympic ideals was to inspire a generation, and I think that we did that. As I say, you don't ever think of yourself as like anybody's idol or whatever, role model or whatever, but it does sometimes turn out to be that way, and people do look to you and be like, oh yeah, I want to do what she's done. So I think it's important, and you have to, for me, I try and be the people that I didn't see. We didn't have that visibility. The only boxers I knew from Britain was Jane Couch. And me and Jane are quite close now, to be fair. But we didn't have anyone to look up to or to aspire to. So I will open myself to be that person that you can just message on social media and be like, okay, I'm going through this. How do I go around it? Or can you come into my school? Yeah, I will, because I think it's important for a whole heap of reasons that women see other women being successful. And yeah.
And it's kind of already going full circle, because when you fought Terry Harper last summer, she spoke about the fact that you were one of her inspirations and reasons for getting into boxing. How did you deal with that, manage that when you were then, you know, against the fight, and a lot was made about age difference, and from what you said, you were like, prove everyone wrong, it gives you more motivation. But what was it like, you know, competing against someone that cites you as one of her reasons for getting into the sport?
It was mad. It made me realise just how old I was. But yeah, it was nice. It was very, I think me and Terry was very respectful. There wasn't any issues. It's just business at the end of the day. You know, at the end of when the final bell rings, you can see that we embrace and we hug, and we've got nothing but mutual respect for each other, and that's the way that sport should be. You know, it is what it is when it's in there, but once it's over, it's over.
I'll be controversial. I think we see that more with female boxing than men's boxing. I think you can draw the line under it and be nice to each other after, which isn't always the case with men's fights. Let's talk about food then, because I believe that as a professional athlete, surely the advantage is you can eat everything all the time because you have to fuel yourself. But we know boxing is a sport where you've got to maintain and hit certain weights. What is your approach to food on a day-to-day basis? I appreciate that will change when you're in the build-up to a fight. Yeah,
to be honest, I do eat quite well anyway. I just eat a lot. There's a celebration in the Jonas family every single month, and you know, being part African, part Caribbean, like everything centres around food, and the portions. Even through GB, when I used to live with my nan. I'd be like, Nan, I'm on a diet now because like we were coming up to a competition. She'd be like, yeah, and the plate would be like that. And I'd be like, Nan, I can't eat that. And she'd be like, well, people say you're going skinny. I was like, well, that's kind of the point. You know, we're trying to get down to a weight. So yeah, it's I do eat quite well. But you know, when you're not in camp, I can eat treats, and I am normal. You might see me at a Mackey's drive-through saying it's for the baby, and it's not.
She needs 2 happy meals.
Yes, it's 2 happy meals. But yeah, you know, I eat well, but I can also eat what I want.
How do you manage that fine balance then when you are in the build-up to a fight of needing to, you know, be a certain weight, but also needing to fuel yourself so that you can train as effectively as you need to? Because it's a very, very fine balance, isn't it?
Yeah, I used to manage it myself. And then I was struggling with it a little bit, so I got a nutritionist on board, like I say. So if you're ever scared to ask for help, if you don't know, I mean, the stuff that I've learned throughout my career, that like, you learn a lot about yourself, your mind, and your body. But when you don't know them extra bits that you need to, get someone that does. You know, whether that's in nutrition or psychology or whatever, get somebody on board that does. So I work with Scott Robinson now. And yeah, he gives me a proper diet plan, strictly what it is, what the weight of stuff is, how much carbs it is, how much whatever it is, and you know, the meat that you eat, and snacks, drinks, supplements, everything is on the list. So I don't deviate from the list, and it hasn't failed me yet. So
when you haven't got to be as strict though, what is your, you know, you mentioned you could go for a drive-through takeaway, but what is your sort of perfect meal? What's the meal that when you've been in camp and then you've had the fight and you're like, all right, now we can have some fun? What are you going for? What's on the request?
My favourite meal is probably chili con carne, but like as a meal in general, probably Chinese. Whether that's like in Liverpool, we have chippies that sell Chinese as well. So we, or whether that's just going to a Chinese restaurant and thing. And so, yeah, that's our big thing. So Chinese is probably me go-to. But what's mad is that obviously you're finely tuned as an athlete making a weight, that you feel great. And then the minute you kind of eat something a little bit rubbish, you feel a little bit rubbish. So I've actually come back to camp a little bit earlier than I would have, for the simple fact that like I want to get myself back into eating well and thinking. So yeah, I'm back early because of that.
That dedication.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel sort of pressure? I mean, I know you've been sporty your whole life, so you've always been athletic and in shape. But you don't wear much when you're in a boxing ring. Do you ever feel that sort of pressure that your body's being scrutinised? Because, you know, when you get on the scales as well for a weigh-in, everyone is looking at you. And for women, that can be literally a worst nightmare.
Yeah, in the amateurs, you don't do that. And we wore a vest. I remember the biggest thing that we had in just before the Olympics, they were trying to make it compulsory that women wore like the skort, which was like a skirt. And we kind of said, oh no, we're not. we were like, no, we're not doing that, because I would feel uncomfortable boxing in a skirt, and I didn't want to do that. I think they were saying, you know, just to differentiate between the men, but for us it didn't feel like that, and there was obviously bigger connotations of why did we have to look different. But then as a professional, I remember the first weigh-in I did, and like it is quite daunting. And I remember speaking to Katarina Johnson-Thompson, and she was like, obviously they wear small shorts and crop tops when they're doing all their, and I was like, God, you must always have to have like a six-pack and stuff, and, you know, legs be toned and stuff. And we'd never really had to, our shorts go down to our knee, our vest covered our thingy. The only thing that was ever on show was our arm, and they was toned anyway. From punching, so we'd never had to really worry about anything. And then as a pro, I was like, and I was like doing extra sit-ups to make sure I had like some kind of pack showing, and then Joe was like, well, now tense up, and I was like, what do you mean tense up? And he was like, yeah, you have to do like this, and I was like, so on my first one I was like, I just didn't know what to do. But now it's just like, I get what it is and what it is you do, and I just stand up, and you know, I'm not really that bothered. To be fair, my body doesn't really look that bad anyway, because you are obviously training to be a certain type of way. But I'm not really that intrinsically bothered about it. But I think that confidence only grew through experiencing it a little bit more, because it can be daunting. You're standing in a room predominantly full of men, like with cameras, and you know, like obviously we're on Sky and it goes like live, and you know, you think, oh, what are people going to say, and how are they going to judge me because I'm standing here, you know, in my knickers and bra, getting thingy. So, but yeah, you just get used to it.
Is it just getting used to it, or is it mentally sort of reconciling it with yourself in one way or the other? Do you like block it out, try to think about it? It's impossible to ignore when there are all those cameras and lights, but are there any tricks to sort of overcome that feeling of vulnerability? Because for a lot of women, you know, that's the downside of, you know, going swimming or on holiday when everyone feels like they're being looked at. Do you have any Jedi mind tricks to sort of help with that?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, at the start I was a little bit self-conscious, but I think the way I get over it is just thinking it's part of the process. Like, okay, you're going to have to stand on, that's what you have to do in order to get the fight, and that's how I deal with it. There's something, a step I have to take to get to what I want, really.
Can you just summarise just how important it is for you to get your rest in?
I am a serial napper. Literally, I nap all the time, and I didn't realise how much I napped until lockdown, and the gym was shut, and I was still doing it. And I was like, wow, I'm spending all my day here napping. But yeah, rest, like, it's not even just boxing. We are a physical sport, so obviously rest is important, but rest is important for everybody. You know, your sleep cycle is very important, and then, like I say, you in stuff in between.
What do you do then? What is your, other than a nap, what is your way of relaxing, of winding down?
I read, I meditate, and I do yoga. They're the three things I find that work for me.
The yoga, I mean, it's very yin and yang to boxing. Boxing's so sort of, you know, we think of it as being aggressive, intense. What benefits has the sort of slower style of movement that you get in yoga brought to your fighting?
Flexibility, relaxation, and concentration. Because sometimes you have to hold the poses for quite a while, and sometimes there's that thing, oh, I wonder what it's like outside, and you know, but you bring it back to you got to bring it back. So, and I do that in the boxing ring, believe it or not. Sometimes I'm like, oh, just got hit there. Why are you getting hit? And I'll be talking to myself, and I was like, why did you do that? Oh, there it goes again. How are you still getting hit with this? And like yoga just brings it back up. Like, okay, you're in the moment, you're in the present. Concentrate on what you're doing, and I think it's helped with my concentration.
Do you find it easy to switch off and get to sleep at night?
Oh, I can sleep at any given. I can sleep right now.
Oh, really?
I can sleep. I'm one of them people that people hate, who like sit on the plane and then before it's taken off, I'm like,
I'm jealous of those
I know, I'm so bad.
Do you sleep well the night before a big fight? Because it's often, you know, those big situations where you know you need a good night's sleep, that you're either thinking, I need a good night's sleep. Now I've only got 8 hours, 7 hours, 6 hours.
Yeah.
How do you get to sleep before a big fight?
I've got some apps on my phone that I've used recently, and then there's lots of stuff. There's loads of bits of information you can grab from YouTube anywhere that you can just listen into, whether that's like a relaxation sleep thing or, you know, whatever it is. Sleep stories. My little girl loves the sleep stories on one of the apps that I've got. So yeah, it's just pulling the information out. But you can, before that, you know, I'd do 140 rounds in my head before I'd even got into the fight. But you have, like I say, you have to just be learning to switch off. And I think, again, yoga is a good thing for that, especially meditating as well.
How do you clear your mind for meditation? Because for a lot of people, that's the big challenge. It's something that's taken a bit of time to be able to sort of clear your mind and get the benefits from it.
Yeah, no, listen, I'm no expert at meditating, but again, it's a process. It's like anything else. It's a muscle. Your mind's a muscle. You have to, you know, help it grow and help it get stronger, and you only do that by practicing the same things. And I'm nowhere near any good at anything, but, you know, I'm practicing, I'm learning, I'm going through the motion of doing it. So.
And that's all we've all got to do, right?
Yeah,
Practice
that's all you've got to do is practice.
Natasha, thank you so much for joining us on Rise With Us. Your sort of attitude to just seizing opportunities and not being afraid of failure and finding help when you need it is advice we can all take. So thank you very much.
Cheers, thanks for having me.
Sky Sports. Feel it all.